Hey, folks, here is the second weekly show, and I've got four tracks to take a look at, and we'll get right into it. We have two from uh, David Smalley, and then a new one from a new David, and then James has sent in a second track. So we'll go ahead, we'll go through them in the order that I've got them lined up in the DAW. And once again, doing this every week, you can send stuff anytime between now and next Saturday, and I will take a look at it and upload it to a show. So send those tracks in to atonuvrecords@gmail.com, and we'll take a look at it. And as soon as my internet is back to fully functional, we'll go back to the nightly live stream. So yeah, feel free to hit me up via email absolutely whenever. There's also a Patreon for this stream. Thanks to the folks that are helping this out. You can check that out in the description as well. And let's go ahead, let's get right into diving into stuff. So, first off, we have Preacher's Folly. So, this is from New David. And I saw on a forum that he was mastering some stuff himself and he was wondering how it was going. So we'll take a look at this from a mastering perspective. Let's go ahead, let's take a listen and see how it's going.
Preacher man, spitting out fire, leaves me clear, no selfish desire. Day by day, faith grows stronger. That shepherd man, he's held to a standard. His wandering eye led him straight to the fire. He looked with lust and stepped in the pyre. Wasn't long, he was wholly consumed. Forbidden fruit got him down like old Adam. Won't look to man, won't be duped by a liar. I look to one that has truth as his banner. Eyes on him and the rest don't matter. King of kings, he's my only desire. His wandering eye led him straight to the fire. He looked with lust and stepped in the pyre. Wasn't long, he was wholly consumed. Forbidden fruit got him down like old Adam. Won't look to man, won't be duped by a liar. I look to one that has truth as his banner. Eyes on him and the rest don't matter. King of kings, he's my only desire. Won't look to man, won't be duped by a liar. I look to one that has truth as his banner. Eyes on him and the rest don't matter. King of kings, he's my only desire.
All right. Really like the track. It has a great classic feel and the mix is very good. There are a couple of things that I would address in this. Now, kind of two minds on a few things because I can tell that you are going for something very classic. So I'm going to make some recommendations about how to keep it within like a classic vibe, but also like if we were to make this competitive in a modern setting. So, uh, so mind you, mileage may vary on a couple of these things. So, first off, um, I listen to it, up to the first verse, and this is what I do in general is I give it a big old listen, and then I'll pull up a frequency meter to kind of confirm some of my feelings. So, um, off the bat, I was like, I don't really feel like there is a big, deep low end happening. So I'm talking about below 90 hertz. The kick drum doesn't have a lot of energy, and it feels like the bottom could get filled out a little bit more. Pulled up the frequency graph, and yeah, there is room to give some love to like specifically 60. That's like a nice classic place for that kick to live. And you could breathe some life into that while still preserving a classic feel, I think. Just a little, and I would go back to the mix rather than the master and just give that kick some energy. Now, the other thing, kind of moving up the spectrum, the bass is a bit swampy. I would tame that bass right around 125. It's overrepresented and it could just help the mix feel a little more balanced in general. So take out some bass right at 125, like 2 dB, 3 dB maybe, kind of like play with it. Um, and then the next thing, moving up that frequency spectrum, I didn't feel like this was a punchy mix. Like nothing was just like hitting me in the gut. I didn't feel like anything was leaping out. And 200 is where we're going to feel that punch. That's like punch central, and pulled up the graph, and we've got a big old dip there. And I would go into the mix and beef up that snare. Your snare could be punchier. Just some love at 200. And so this is all mixed stuff. Now, where we're gonna get into some mileage may vary stuff is above 16K, very scoopy. Just like basically there's nothing above 16K. Now, if we're just going for a pure classic vibe, I could live with that. I would brighten up those cymbals a little bit. You've got like half an octave of information, that air band, 16K to 20K, and it could get sparklier. This could be brighter, this could be lifted. And you could either add some sparkle to the cymbals and vocal and kind of everything in the mix. You could even use like a nice EQ and just give a lift to the airband in the master. I would at least experiment with it because it's just gonna feel a little more lifted out. And then everything in your mids and your upper mids sounds really nice. It's a really, really nice mix. I'm just gonna be very picky about like get some more at 60 so that we can feel this. Cut some at 125. Get some punch in at 200. Those are all going to be like necessary things to do. Over 16K, at least experiment with brightening up this mix. So this is all like kind of mixed stuff. You could technically do all of this in the master, but since you're mastering your own stuff, you might as well just do it in the mix. Now, as far as mastering goes, once again, we're veering towards a very, very nice classic thing. I pulled up my loudness meter, and you are true peaking at -1. That's cool. You could do like -0.1. That's generally nice. I think it's a nice way to live, but -1 is cool. Your dynamic range is very, very nice and healthy. That's great. Now, giving a little bit of love at 60 is going to cut into your dynamic range a little bit. So, but you have tons to work with. Now, your average loudness, your RMS, is pretty low. It's your RMS negative 12, which is, as far as like referencing very classic stuff, quite nice. This is very, very, very nice. If this was to stack up to a modern playlist, you would want to get your RMS to like negative 9. So you've got some room that you could push this. And I would recommend it. Now, -9 is a very, very nice like middle ground. It's loud enough to be competitive. It won't get squashed or have weird stuff happen on a Spotify algorithm. And it's going to preserve your dynamics, especially if you're preserving your dynamic range as well. It'll sound big and powerful, but it won't be like overly squashed. It's a really, really nice target, -9 RMS. So I would play with that on the mastering side of things. So, great mix, great song. I really like everything that's happening. I really like all of the sounds. It's very, very nice musicianship. Like everything is there to do a nice, to make it good, I'm nitpicky on like 4 frequency points, and then it could maybe be a little bit louder. But this was very good, like a good, solid mix and master. And if you're just going for like purely classic stuff, then by all means, this master is quote unquote loud enough. I would recommend pushing it a little bit hotter. Okay, let's go ahead and go on to Other David, the Don't Start bootleg. And in your email, you mentioned that you want the bass to be the focus of this track, but it's just not quite sitting right. So let's take a look at this. And I'm just going to volume match these because we've got some masters and some mixes. So
Did a full 180, crazy, thinking about the way I was. Did the heartbreak change me? Maybe, but look
Uh, so, David, you've been like emailing me stuff for the last month and a half, and like your stuff is already really good, but it's gotten even better. These are just super clean, really, really nice mixes. So, like, hats off. This is great. That bass, you in the email, you were like, it doesn't sound quite right, but maybe I'm just hearing things. I'm veering towards maybe you're just hearing things because it sounds really nice. That low end is nice and smooth, well balanced. Everything feels really good. If I was to play with anything on that bass, you could pick like a mid range point, like 700, 900, 1K maybe. 1K is probably pushing it. Um, but somewhere in the 500 to, I would guess, 700, 900 region, you could give it a little bit of presence. But you would want to make sure that it's counterbalanced against the vocal, because we've got kind of contrasting things happening where some of the moments where we want where the bass is like up on the neck, those are also vocal moments. So we have to be really careful that anything we do doesn't swamp the vocals. So like I would take a look in the mix and like, where is that vocal living? If the vocal's living at 500, then put the bass up at 700 in a different region, or vice versa, or do a little boost and cut. And it's really going to be about counterbalancing the vocal and the bass, I think. The snare could maybe be punchier at 200 if I'm going to just throw out like a thing to maybe look at. But this mix is awesome. It's really great. To get more presence out of that bass, I like where it's sitting. Like listening in my room, I'm like, this is quite nice. But if you wanted to play around with something, it's that like mid-range point, balance it against the vocal, see what happens. So love what's happening here. Awesome work. Okay, and this is Turn Away from James. Now, James, this is your second time sending stuff in, and we kind of talked about it on YouTube and via email. I know you're having, you're a little fresh on mixing drums, and what I would love to do is if you want to send me something where you like mute all your drums and send everything but drums in a bounce, and then bounce out all of your drums, send them to me, and then on the next show I'll mix the drums, do a pretty thorough mix of your drums against your track, and it'll be cool for everyone to see, and I'll have fun doing it, because I know that's something that you're a little bit new to, and I'd love to, walk you through it. So feel free to do that, but let's go ahead. Let's take a listen to this track and see what's happening at this moment.
If I told you I'm afraid, would you turn away from me? If sometimes I have a bad day, would you turn away from me? Do you hear voices like I do? They took my children and they'll take yours too. If it seems like I'm not all there, oh, yes, I know I've been tired, but don't tell me that I don't care, no, 'cause I don't want want to die alone. If I find it hard to sleep at night, would you turn away from me? 'Cause I'm dreaming of the day my best friend died. Would you turn away from me? I lost my keys and forgot my name. If I lose my mind, am I still to blame? If it seems like I'm not all there, oh, yes, I know I've been tired. But don't tell me that I don't care, no, 'cause I don't want to die alone.
Okay, awesome track. Right off the gate, at the bottom of the frequency spectrum, your bass is just it's too tubby below 100, like especially at 60. And this is like something that we would address, especially when mixing those drums in. Your kick and your bass are fighting a lot at 60. So I would just take lots of information out of that bass. For like rock and pop and singer songwriter and all of that stuff, you can get rid of lots of bass below 100 and no one will miss it. Like where we want, because we're generally doing like really melodic bass stuff. So that's going to live. And especially if we want the bass line to drive the song, much like it is in this mix. For like your average consumer, like that bass can live between 100 and 300 and be really present there, and no one's gonna miss the stuff below 100. You can be pretty cutty with your bass, especially if it's fighting with the kick fundamental like it is at 60. So you know, get rid of some bass. But really, really solid mix. I love your guitar and vocal mixing. It is quite nice. Sounds great. Great tones. Um, you're doing like a call and response with yourself. You've got the main line and then the response vocals. I would probably be I would get a little creative with those response vocals, maybe put them through a different reverb, maybe something. And in general, you're being very conservative with your reverbs, which is really nice. Like it's super clean. I would like most of the time I wouldn't recommend this. You know, I wouldn't be wetter with your verbs for most people, but I'm feeling like you could get a little longer decay times, like a little bit, and a little bit wetter. But especially on those like response vocals, they could benefit from feeling like they're coming from another place, especially when you're doing like if you're doing everything by yourself and you're multi-tracking your own vocals to do the call and response, make your response sound different, and it'll be impactful to the listener. We are crowding the mid range a little bit, like 500 to 1,000. That said, those drums are also eating up a lot. Like, they're basically above 2K, it's all drums. So, this is like a drum mixing thing. Like, I would probably get a little bit cutty on those drums to put some like excitement and some just like excitement is the word that I'm looking for. Like in the guitar, especially those like really cool blah 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 like little ear candy things. Like I would put those up a little bit in the frequency spectrum so that they hit and they're exciting when they hit. You are doing that to a degree. Like I can hear it, I can see it on the graph that we're starting to get like instrument information when those elements happen, but it's kind of a combination of factors. Like if the drums were a little bit cut there, and then also a little more aggressive on the spice on those instrument parts, the whole mix is going to lift a lot more. But this is in a really, really great place. I really want to help you get more comfortable with this drum stuff, because that is the absolute only thing stopping you from just having killer mixes, just getting those drums dialed in. So definitely feel free to send like those drum stems and all that. I'll just show you some tricks, and some of it's going to be like picking some different samples, picking a different kit, which maybe we won't be able to do on the stream because sample replacement is such a thing. But just getting a sense of how to pull some more organic tones out of like drum samples. But yeah, awesome work. Feel free to send stuff whenever. And okay, last up we have David's orchestral master, which same thing. He's like, maybe this is great, maybe it isn't. So let's take a listen and we'll see how it is. Okay, I love this track. And yeah, I heard this last week, and I was like, what I'm missing is like some mid-range saturation, and that did it. That felt a lot like warmer, and it did the thing that I was hoping would happen. So first off, that's good. Second off, loudness. Absolutely perfect, on the money, dialed in. Awesome job. So, like, very good master. Frequency spectrum is good. So, I like this. I really like this track. If I was like, it feels very, uh, like kind of it's Hollywood esque. So if I was a music director and I was like, I need this for a scene, I would be like, this delivered. I think that it is very, very, it is a proper track. So I love that breakdown in the middle. It's very nice. So I know you were saying that just there's, like a thing or two that you're not happy with. So I'm going to like kind of veer out of my lane because on a pure technical level, this is great. Um, so now we're getting into like artistic, like neurotic things. So if I was to dive into something, you've got kind of two snares on this track. When the snare is driving, like before the kick drops, it's a very, very snappy, bright snare. And then when the whole thing is happening, it's a very dark snare. I kind of feel, and once again, I'm outside of my lane. I think that the bright snare is a little too bright, because it's kind of overwhelming in the mix, like at those, like right here. It's kind of pulling focus away from the melody, and by all means, maybe that's the intention. I mean, that's proper within like a lot of dance moments. But if I was thinking a little more cinematic, I still want to have those strings take center focus. So, I would pull away some snap on the snare. So, like dial back 1.5K, let the strings take up that space instead. Um, that's maybe a thing to play with. It's eating up a lot of the mix. It's also cool, you know? And then conversely, when we're in the thick of it, now that snare is getting eaten up. So it's like I would cut the difference on those two snares. Like a little less on the builds, and then a little more when everything's in, so that we have a sense of the backbeat. Because right now it's like right here the snare's eating the strings, and then here the strings are totally eating the snare. And on one hand, that's cool because we have like a change of relationship, and that's very interesting. Like on the outset to the listener, like when I'm listening, I'm like, this is exciting. But if I am like micro focusing, I'm like, maybe it could be better. Maybe if the difference was split on those two, we would still have like a very powerful snare that isn't eating up information during the builds, and then maybe it could get balanced against the strings when we're all in, so that we still have a backbeat against the strings. That's what I would play with. Uh, you could do something insane like bust out the strings. You can do it in Studio One really easily. You can like frequency split every single track. I'm not sure what you're using, but I would like side chain like 1 to 3K on the strings, so that only 1 to 3K gets ducked when the snare hits, so that the snap hits on the backbeat and it just sucks the string. I mean, we're talking like, because it can sound really weird. It can sound like an accidental wah, but like frequency specific side chaining. like 1 to 2 dB of gain reduction, and it's just gonna let that snap through uh, and pull some focus on the backbeat. That's kind of what I would play with in situations like this. I don't know how much of a pain that's going to be to set up in your DAW or with the plugins that you have, or if that's even necessarily the answer. Swap out some samples. Uh, if I'm trying to find fault in this mix, that's what I would focus on, because everything else sounds so nice. This is really nicely written, arranged, mixed, mastered. This is an excellent master. Uh, you know, I don't want to like make you hunt for things that aren't real, because this is very good. But, you're like, is there something I could do? I would maybe play with that. All right, folks. That is everything that I have today. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, upload it. But yeah, feel free to send stuff in between now and Saturday ish. This is a day late. I was busy. So yeah, awesome to work with your stuff. Love hearing what you're doing. And I will see you next time.